Okay, welcome everybody. I apologize for my first meeting as board president, and I'm already 20 minutes late. Thank you everybody for waiting. That's a heck of a start. We're already in open session, so I'm gonna, because our previous meeting before this, I'm gonna ask Allison to call roll.
Cervantes? Here. Lyon?
Yes.
Phelps?
Yes.
Rodriguez? Here. Sharpie?
Here.
Bestab? Here. Fletcher?
Okay, and if everybody could stand for a moment of silence and a pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, thank you. And we're gonna have a slight change of the agenda. I'm gonna turn it over to Dr. Esplin as we're gonna honor our retirees. So thank you.
Hello, everyone. Okay, so I have a list of retirees here, and I know not everybody's here. Even when I can only see this much of your face, I still can recognize most people. So, I am gonna call everybody's name, and if you are here, I would ask that you come up when I do call your name. Now typically, in a non-COVID year, we would shake hands, we do a lot of stuff like that. This year, it's gonna be unique, Mike, I'm looking at you. So you're gonna get a unique retirement, okay? And we do have gifts with your name on them. So when you come up to get yours, when you see your name, please feel free to take your candy this year, I'm not gonna touch it. And so, when I call your name, first of all, I want the board members to go ahead and come on out here to the front. Normally, we'd have shake hands. We're not gonna do that this time, okay? But board members, come on out front and stand in front. In any order you feel is good for you. So then, keep on going around. When the retiree comes up, come up to me first. Okay, come up to me first. This pickerel's gonna get pictures of you as you're going through. So as you go by the board, wave, air high five, whatever strikes your fancy. No hugs, no touching skin, alright? So we're gonna be good here, we're gonna be safe. Alright, so we're gonna start with, is Orinda Bembo here? Oh, Orinda, I didn't think I saw Orinda. Well, Orinda Benbow, it says 2 years. Orinda was here a number of years, then left and came back. And Orinda is retiring this year. She's currently a cross-categorical teacher at Silas Willard. So congratulations, Orinda. Tanya Morrison. Tanya here? Okay. She's been 10 years, food service, kitchen assistant at Lombard Middle School. Tanya Morrison. Robert Nichols. Let's say I know one of you, right? Yeah. Robert's been a law enforcement teacher at GHS GABC for 11 years. So see your name over there, get your candy dish, and walk by. There somewhere. Yeah. There you go. Thank you.
Congratulations. Congratulations. There you go.
Susan Hayes. Susan retired after 12 and a half years as an administrative assistant. She spent many of those years at Yale and then was at Silas Willard and most recently in the district office. Susan Hayes. I see the next one's here. Nancy Dillard. Come on up, Nancy. Many of you may know Nancy as the musical and play director, and we also would honor her for that. But on the list tonight, it also says Nancy is a wonderful cross-categorical teacher at Galesburg High School and has been here 17 years. Nancy Dillard. There you go. That's right. There you go. There
With my mask on. Yeah.
All right, I know the next one's here too, because in the front, Russ Rob. Russ has been here for 17 years. It says band teacher, Lombard and Churchill, which is true, but he's also the fine arts director here at Galesburg. So after 17 years, we'll say goodbye to Russ. Congratulations. There you go. All right, I see the next one's here too. Mr. Miller, Michael Miller, come on up. Mike Miller, before you were here, you have a unique background. Not everybody has a unique background. What did you do before you taught here?
When I first came to Galesburg, I would work for AG Edwards and Sons as a financial consultant.
So, financial consultant, so you thought it'd be a prudent financial decision to come and teach here, right?
Exactly.
Exactly.
I mean, you guys gave me a raise. You said, I want to get deducted 20%. So.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good. All right, so Mike made that decision 20 years ago, and now he's retiring. So thank you, Mike. Powell is here. She's not, right? Teresa was served 23 years as an English teacher at Churchill High School and is retiring at the end of this year. Teresa Powell. I'm going to go out of order because I don't think she's here. Kathy Finch here? Okay. Kathy Finch worked here 37 and a half years as a food service employee the entire time as a cook. And was most recently at Galesburg High School, Kathy Finch. But I did see our last person is here, so Danny, come on up. There you go. Danny's coming, Danny, the custodian. Were you at the high school the whole time? Yeah, that's the entire time, 32 and a half years. Danny Stranger was the custodian at the high school, and you retired effective, what, March 1st? Yeah. March 1st, so Danny Stranger. Thank you, everyone. I'm always happy to see you.
Some people say nothing. For the district or out?
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Robert, thank you. Good seeing you, Brad.
It was my
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations, Mr. Miller.
Wow, absolutely.
That was a nice way to start the meeting. Next, we're at the point for recognition of public comments. Do we have anybody? Okay, well, that's moving quick. Okay, number 5 on the agenda is presentations to the board. Ms. Ham, we have a presentation for the FY21 amended budget.
Good evening. Okay, so I'm going to be presenting both the District 205 amended budget as well as the JVC amended budget. This budget presentation will be much brighter than the one that we received in September. Sort of our worst case assumptions did not come to fruition this year, thanks to a variety of different circumstances that kind of broke our way as a school district this year. We had two emergency relief bills that passed in Washington, ESSER 1 and ESSER 2, that helped out our bottom line significantly this year, as well as revenue projections for the state actually being up to the point where Governor Pritzker just announced, I believe it was last week, that he is proposing to add $350 million of new dollars to the evidence-based funding model. We thought that was going to be flat funding. So things definitely were much better than we had projected and everyone had thought. So I'm going to review the assumptions.
Can I ask one question about the ESSERs, Mike?
Sure.
Those are non-recurring though, right?
Those are non-recurring, correct?
So we got them, we got the second one.
Correct.
It was very generous, but
That's it.
that's,
Yes.
well,
Okay, so in yellow here, this is very small, so I apologize, I'm gonna go through and kind of read these. These were our core assumptions that we based the FY21 budget on at the beginning of the year. And I just in yellow added some updates on them. So the first assumption is that all salary, benefit, and regular operational costs included in the budget due to the uncertainty of the learning platform for 2020-2021. So when we passed the budget in September, we were still deciding how long we were going to be on virtual learning. So we built in all of our salaries. As we know, we did not go back into more of a full in-person situation and environment really until February. So there was some cost savings with salaries in there. But on the other hand, we fortunately, after, I think, gentlemen, 37 meetings with negotiations this year, we have settled the contract with the GEA. So we have put in all of those raises into the budget. So we were able to save a little money, but then the budget for the additional salaries and the back pay is actually taking that up, and we'll break those down a little bit later on. We had contingencies that we increased in accounts pending the contract language. The contingencies were reduced back to normal levels with both the awarding of ESSER 1, ESSER 2, and then the settling of the contract. And then contingencies for unemployment insurance were created to cover additional expenses. So at the time we created the budget, there was uncertainty how long the state government was going to continue to supplement COVID-related unemployment, as well as the federal government. So through the fourth quarter, now it's our fourth fiscal quarter, but it'll be the second quarter of the calendar year for the state, all unemployment claims will be covered between either state or federal funds. Fortunately, we have called back all of our employees. So anyone who wanted to come back and who wanted a job was offered a position. Some people had other positions, some people declined and resigned from their position, but we have offered positions back, which means that as of today, everyone should be off of our unemployment rolls. So moving forward, once that state and federal aid for unemployment ends, we should be back to our regular unemployment claims level pre-COVID, which was very, very minimal. So we were able to take that contingency that we had at 1.2 million back to the 100,000 that we run on a normal basis. On the next sheet is the exact assumption sheet that I had in the first presentation in September. And I just crossed out some of the things that never came to fruition, thankfully. So we reduced CPPRT by 20%, and we're seeing our CPPRT level of revenue coming in pretty consistently as we had in the past.
Which stands for what?
Corporate personal property replacement tax.
Okay.
We also reduced our interest income by 80% overall, which if anyone who follows the stock market, our investments have actually been doing very well this year, so that did not come to fruition. We only budgeted for 2 categorical payments from the state, and we have received all of our categorical payments. And in fact, I believe Dr. Asplund mentioned to me last week that the state is within 30 days of paying all of their bills, which it hasn't been that way for a number of years that they've been current to that level. We also have that the EDF is budgeted for flat funding, and we actually reduced it by 12% because there was some conversation earlier in the year from financial analysts that the state was not going to be able to make EBF payments. That has not come to fruition. Our tax year 2020 levy was budgeted basically at the same rate as 2019. The reduced collection rate by up to 20% never came to fruition. We did get our Warren County receipts later, but that was because of a system change, and they got their tax bills out late. It wasn't because of a collection problem. So we received our normal amount, about 90% of our receipts. As allocations for FY21 at 1.9 million, actually increased with additional ESSER 1 and ESSER 2 for a total of about 7.5 million, which those are targeted funds specifically for COVID response and COVID-related improvements, COVID-related items. So that can't just be spent on anything, but it was additional revenue that we did see. Pre-K and pre-K expansion, we received all of our funds for both of those. We have seen a reduction in the 1% sales tax earlier on in the fiscal year in July and August, but as the recovery has grown throughout the county and throughout the state, we have seen those local 1% revenues also increase. We reduced all of our fees to zero, which the board had passed previously for basically zero fees as it was, so that really wasn't going to be much of an impact on the budget. Reduced lunch sales, now that the board has voted that we are all, I'm stuck on CEP, thank you. I was about ready to say CPPRT again, but CEP.
Which also stands for?
Community Eligibility Program. So now that we are CEP, we won't be collecting lunch fees unless students at the high school level would want a la carte, or a student would want an extra milk, something of that nature. And then our federal and state lunch reimbursement, we did budget that at the same amount, and those revenues have also been coming in. So this is turning out to be a much brighter perspective than we had initially thought. So if you just take a look at the screen, really the two columns that are most important are the last yellow column and the last gray column. So we had initially projected a deficit of 8.3 million in the ed fund. We are projecting a $1.1 million deficit in the ed fund. O&M, we were looking at about a $670,000 deficit, and we're actually going to have $8 left over. So 8 is better than nothing. Our debt service at a deficit of $302,000. That was a structural plant deficit because we had additional monies that we have in debt services and that cannot be transferred anywhere. Transportation, we were looking at a $1.1 million deficit. Now we're looking at $672,000. We did end up having to add additional routes when we came back because of the 50 student limitation for the routes with COVID. So our hope is as more individuals are vaccinated, as more people are able to be included in smaller spaces, that we'll be able to reduce our number of routes, which will also help for a student because they have a driver shortage. So the more efficient we can run our routes is actually better for them as well. IMRF, this was a planned reduction of planned deficit at $846,000. With IMRF and Social Security, we levy for those, so we cannot transfer those into any other funds. So to keep that balance low is good for the taxpayers. We're not levying additional money that we don't need. Capital projects were at zero. Those numbers you're going to see in your budget change a little bit. We're just adjusting where the payments between health, life, safety, and capital projects are going, but those are all budgeted out to zero. We have an additional $2,000 in working cash, and tort, we're looking at a $734,000 deficit, but that was also planned. Tort, you should be spending all of your expenses that you're levying for. We will not be deficit, we will have a fund balance in essence from that. So with that being said, things look much better than they did in September. Looking at just the ed fund, because the ed fund is the majority of our personnel expenses, we actually actually, from what we'd initially projected, with the settling of the contract, we're looking at our amended expenses, for salaries being about 27.8 million versus 27.4 million. Employee benefits, are a little less. Those are just individuals that, chose not to possibly take health insurance. There's a variety of reasons that is less. Purchase services, is more than we had initially budgeted, but that has to do with ESSER 1 and ESSER 2 funds, not because we've overspent in those. So those were, once again, very specific things that we had to spend. Like for instance, we purchased a lot of Chromebooks this year. We purchased a lot of technology, software to support virtual learning. Capital or supplies and materials is the same way at 8.3 million. That is mostly inclusive of ESSER 1 and ESSER 2 monies. Capital outlay at 672,000, excuse me. Also inclusive of ESSER monies. Other objects, we actually dropped down from 3.5 to 1.1. Other objects would be inclusive of unemployment insurance, contingencies for IMRF, and contingencies for TRS. And then non-capitalized equipment, we went from 97,000 to 44,000. No termination benefits were budgeted because of the state and federal government picking up those COVID related expenses. So we have a budget, an amended budget of 44,796,000, but inclusive of that is 7.5 million of ESSER 1 and ESSER 2 money. So we include it, we have to count it, but those are, as Member Lyons said, one-time funds that are very specific to the COVID response and the COVID recovery.
What was that number again?
7.5 million.
About 7.5 million. So, kind of the report card for the board is board policy 4:10. And out of the 6 indicators in 4:10, this first indicator, which is operating with 180 days of cash on hand, was only projected to be at 81% of your goal. So fortunately, with this amendment of the budget, we have met all of our goals with 180 days of cash on hand. So if you take a look, our projected fund balance in education is $22,339,634. To have 180 days of cash on hand, we would need 18.9 million. So we have met and surpassed that goal. Operating and maintenance goal was 718,000, and we are going to end with a fund balance of $1,663,580. And transportation, the projected fund balance is $2,625,108, and our 180-day cash on hand goal is 1.1 million. So from that perspective, we're on target, and we've met all of those goals. And then the second part of 4:10 is operating revenue to fund balance ratio. So our expenses for the year, we should have as a goal 50% of what we spend saved in our fund balances, is the easiest way to say that. So if we take a look at what our projected ed fund revenue is 43.6 million, and our projected fund balance is 22.3, and our goal, we only needed to be at 21.8 to meet that goal. So we're exceeding that revenue to fund balance. And inclusive in that 43 million is also those ESSER funds. So if you were to look at that, we would actually even be in a better position without those ESSER funds in there, since those one-time funds. Operations and maintenance, our projected revenue is 1.6 million, our projected fund balance is 2.6, and the goal is 831,000, so once again, we've surpassed that. And with transportation, our projected revenue was 1.7, the fund balance is a projected 2.6 million, and the goal was $868,000. So we have once again met all of those. So the board gets an A on your report card for where we ended up at the end of the year. Does anyone have any questions?
Mrs. Ham,
Yes.
just so that folks in the gallery, watching now or later, later. And just for clarification, why is it important for us as a board to meet those two goals?
It is very important because if we do not meet those goals, number one, if the state of Illinois falls into another financial crisis or another financial situation, which the state of Illinois has not done what it needs to do to correct some of the funding and expense issues that have plagued really the state for 30 and 40 years, we have a revenue, we have a rainy day fund to be able to continue to pay our salaries, to be able to continue to transport our students. We have a cushion there, so we're not relying upon state or federal sources. It also allows us to ensure that we don't have to go back to our taxpayers to increase the tax rate to cover the difference if the state does not meet its obligations in the future.
Does it help us in our rating?
I'm sorry?
Does it help us in our rating?
It also helps us in our bond rating, and it also helps us in our financial score profile that we get each year through our AFR. Absolutely, yes.
Or we're bonded at the max right now, correct?
We are bonded at the maximum, yes.
Thank you, Member Lyon, for raining on this board member's
Hold on.
parade.
I'm gonna put an umbrella on that. So, we're gonna have a chance in interim periods to be able to restructure some bonds.
Okay.
So it's not as if it's just, well, we're maxed out, so it doesn't matter what our bond rating is. No, when our bonds become callable, that becomes very important. Because then we can take bonds that we're paying, let's say 3.5% on, and perhaps we can take them to 2%. And so, when we have a really good bond score, and just for those people listening at home, we've talked about this before, when we talk to bond rating agencies over the last 2 years, they've told us we've done everything we can do to have as good a bond rating as we can. It's the state of Illinois that's held us back. The fact that they now are on a regular bill paying cycle is going to help tremendously so that we can get up to perhaps AA plus, or not AAA, they'll never do Illinois AAA. But if we could get to AA plus, right now we're AA minus because just because of the state of Illinois. So it is very much an important part of the equation when we look long term.
And the reason the state of Illinois is such an important factor is that when you have a large portion of your revenue coming from an unreliable source, that Moody's and the other bond rating companies have to take that into consideration. So. Okay, all right, well, let's talk about JVC really quickly here. JVC is a lot less complicated because we know that there's really only one fund that we're dealing with. Oh, there it is. And this year looks a little askew, kind of like the entire world looks a little askew, a little different than normal. We did borrow $2 million for the build out and renovations of JVC. And so that is reflected in the amendment. It's a little difficult to see up there. We had originally budgeted for revenues of $537,000. With JVC, basically all of the monies that they receive through state and federal grants go out through salaries. So they do have a small reserve, but there's very little carryover. And they typically never run a deficit. Now there is about $330,000 that they have carried over that they have as surplus. And some of that was used this year as part of the build out and to cover some of the salary increases that they had not budgeted for at the beginning of the year because of not having the contract settled. So at the end of the day, we ended up with amended revenue of $2.5 million, once again because of the build out. Our budgeted expenses were $566,337. We ended up with amended expenses of $2,708,609. We are not running a deficit. It's basically a zero balance. We will have an ending fund balance of $232,140, so they do have a cushion in there. But it does look like a deficit because we did kind of tap into their reserves that they have. But that that'll be adjusted, next year when we have, since we have a contract for the next 2 years, we'll be able to predict that and make those adjustments. And the adjustments come on the tuition side that we charge to other districts. And
We charge
to
ourselves too, right?
we charge ourselves and other districts. Yes, we don't want that getting out there, that we just let our kids go for free and charge everyone else, so no, we charge ourselves as well. Does anyone have any questions about JVC?
Thank you, Ms. Ham.
Okay, you're welcome.
Moving on, motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. And that's minutes, payroll claims.
There's one unique one on there, two. Well, we do it every year, IESA and IHSA membership, so
Yes.
it's not a typical monthly one, but it's a typical year.
Does anybody have any questions, concerns, or comments? Seeing none, Allison?
Surratt,
Aye.
Glenn, Phelps,
Aye.
Rodriguez, Shelby,
Aye.
Bastow, Becher,
Okay, moving on to focus area one, relevant skills that lead to employability. Administrative report on curriculum.
Good evening. If you'll look at my report, I'm just gonna highlight a couple different things. We are currently working on recruiting and hiring teachers for the fall, for the openings. We've also linked in there our vacancy, postings, so anyone can access that. We have some positions at the high school for some retirements, we have some elementary openings, we have some choir and band openings as well. We have upcoming offerings here in June, so right after school is out, the 1st through the 4th of June, we will be having, Ready Math and, articulation of curriculum, K-8. So we'll be working on that. That will be led by Mrs. Hawkins and Ms. Crowell. We also have some high school curriculum alignment, moving from 4 block to 7 period and adjusting those courses, and our offerings for the 22-23 school year when we become a 7-12 campus. We also have our last equity leadership team meeting here on the 20th, Thursday of next week. And Ms. Marceline DeVos from the Equity Literacy Institute is gonna lead us through that. The goal here is to take what we've learned this year and then be leaders within the buildings, because we have selected members from each of the buildings to represent those groups, and then work through school improvement plans, and developing those and integrating those within our school improvement plans at an even greater level. And then we'll also be using some case studies to shift practice so that these folks can also go to their buildings and using these case studies to talk over some of these pieces objectively, from an outsider's perspective, and really recognizing some of the issues that are, plaguing, some of the situations you have. Like, for example, we might assign a homework, assignment for home. Does everybody have the access and materials to complete that work, or are we making assumptions? Those different things we'll go through. We also are doing some norming work with the department chairs. Our next meeting is on Monday, and then I have Mr. Powell, if you'll come up. We have the data presentation for you for high school. You should have that in your curriculum report. I linked that in there.
Hello. Got the midterm 4 updated numbers in front of you. The midterm ended, so 4-term midterm, I believe, was this past Friday, or nope, Friday before that. And grades were due the following Tuesday for that. Term 4 is usually, along with term 2, a tough term for students, and that kind of reflects out here with some of our failure numbers in term 4, midterm 4 so far, which then also has a trickle effect of what the snapshot of what on track looks like here at this time here, midterm 4. So we knew kind of a combination of the needed move to go remote for the high school for a couple of weeks to kind of slow some of the spread down, as well as when that spread with a lot of positive cases happening with contact tracing. We knew that could have had a negative effect on grades, and it certainly mirrors kind of some of the numbers we had from term 2 in terms of failures. Some outreach efforts during that time from our deans and counseling, try to make sure we kind of keep those kids engaged and keep them on track. It's definitely been a tough go for them for this kind of term 4 time here. So, any questions as you guys look at those charts?
Mr. Powell?
Yes.
among the term 2, term 3, and term 4, how many students do you project to be graduating with COVID? Because right there it says 162, right? But that's not everybody.
No, so that would be, what is also would be included that you do not see on there would be the number of seniors that we have had early grads. Not that I don't know the number directly offhand, but that number is north of 50 in terms of early grads. So you do notice that the number of seniors gets all the way down to 206. I can assure you 206, we had many more seniors than that at the beginning of the year. I think the number was actually closer to 270. I believe at the start of the year, somewhere in that ballpark. So yes, thank you for clarifying. We did have a number of early grads and even a handful of third term grads, which is something that we don't normally do for the high school, but because of the circumstances, because of the challenges of COVID, remote learning, that we did grant many of those students that wish to graduate term 3 that opportunity to add credits.
Is that a typical number of early grads, or do we have a higher number due to COVID?
Definitely higher, definitely higher.
And are we allowing the early grads to participate in the graduation ceremony?
Absolutely, we always allow our early grads to participate in graduation ceremonies. We're treating that this year no different than we would in years past.
Thank you.
Any other questions on the report? Member Cervantes, you had requested information regarding the course breakdown. And so, he has it by subject area on the last sheet, number 8. For you?
Yeah, and I guess I should have mentioned that one since that one's new for this chart. What that is just basically taking a look at combining all of the courses taught within those that were active and had grades during term 4. Just adding those together, seeing what the breakdown is for each of the 5 grades, and taking a look at what the percentage of those failures would be, because like Ms. Springer said, I believe that was one of the things that you had requested to see. So added that chart at the very end, so that percentage on the far right column is the percentage of S issued of total grades in there by each of the main departments. I hope I didn't leave out a department or anything like that, but I believe I did give them all, if not most of them.
So looking at this and knowing that we've been attempting over the last few years to have vertical articulation, COVID is a hard year, right? So are we able to parse out what of this is COVID related and possibly what of this is challenges, quote unquote, per normal?
We certainly have some challenges. I mean, I know you have data that shows the previous years. We actually showed that to the department chairs in our leadership meeting. We do recognize that this basically ripped, the wound off and, ripped the band off an already festering wound. So it's not as though we don't recognize we have the challenges. We are doing a lot of work to remediate some of those concerns and kind of rethinking how we do school. And that's part of the work of the department chairs and then adjustment of this curriculum here in the fall. It's a matter of engaging students and recognizing how students learn. Teachers are working really hard, and I know that. We just want to make sure that we give them all the tools that they need to do their job to the best of their ability and in an efficient manner too. I don't want them working hard and not getting the results that they need, and I also want students to be able to get those same successes as well. But we have to kind of rethink and reflect on what we're doing, because we always have room to improve, always.
Well, the reason I ask is, I do not want, I don't want some folks to be complacent and think that the only reason why these numbers are high
Correct.
are because, is because of COVID. And I also don't want there to be, the wrong assumption that our numbers are always terrible. So, to just be able to let the community know, right? It's a combination of things, and like in many other school districts, and I, given my background, colleges and universities, COVID did rip a Band-Aid off, and it showed, challenges that we had assumed we were addressing because students were in place, right? Captive audience, and we assumed that those things were, going to somehow be taken care of in some capacity. And so what this has allowed us to see is that there are a lot of things that we still have to do and do better. So that's part of the reason for my question. I didn't want because right before COVID, we had started to do that with math
Yeah, we
and,
continue
and,
with
right,
those.
and reading, and so we had started to see, I mean, we had a knowledge of some of those concerns already. I just don't want people to forget, because we've been in a pandemic for 18, well, not 18 months, but it feels like it, that, you know, that work was not somehow already in place and being worked toward.
Correct. Any other questions?
Any other questions?
Thank you, Mr. Powell.
Thank you so much. Moving on, special ed report. Captain Sean.
Good evening, just focusing on a few things from my report, as well as what Tiffany said. We are also interviewing for positions. After tonight's personnel agenda, we will have 2 open special ed positions with interviews being conducted this week to hopefully fill those 2 positions. We are working on our extended school year for special ed. This is for those students with those low incidence disabilities that need that little extra for carryover. We currently have about 20 students set to start for 3 weeks in June at Silas School. And this evening I conducted with Ms. Statham what's called the Timely Meaningful Consultation Meeting with the 2 parochial schools here in Galesburg to discuss those portion of the funds in the grant that are allocated towards those programs. We also completed our needs assessment that's required for special ed on an annual basis. It showed pretty similar results as it has been over the past few years. Kind of the IEP process was a new one, kind of looking at doing some training next year in that area. Multi-tiered system of supports. Although MTSS is not special ed, it is the path that guides you into special ed. So I think the needs assessment goes out to all staff, and so I think there's still some confusion in training as far as that process and leading down that path towards a possible qualification for special ed. And then paraprofessionals. A lot of our paraprofessionals in the survey felt like they could use some more training to be better prepared to deal with the students that they deal with. So if there are no questions, that's all I have.
Any questions?
Well, actually, we only have 2 open positions.
Hey,
Well,
our
pretty
goal
fancy.
is before all my staff leave for the summer and I'm left back here by myself, that everything is filled. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to the building reports. Mr. Houston, would you be able to give us an update on graduation?
Sure, absolutely. Good evening, members of the board. We've had a couple of meetings now trying to figure out what the new CDC guidelines and how we're gonna try to fit graduation in, and yet preserve a traditional ceremony. So it's gone back and forth, as you guys know, and we were hoping that the governor was gonna announce the new bridge phase, but that didn't happen before our last meeting. So we've met as a group and we've kind of done some work, and we've kind of got it figured out that we can have one ceremony at 2 o'clock and be able to get everyone in the stadium with all seniors be given 4 tickets. Mr. Matthews and I have been out to the stadium on several times, kind of looked at the stadium, the occupancy of that, and trying to utilize all the space that we can. And with that, we think that we're gonna be pretty confident in knowing that each senior is gonna get 4 tickets, and we're gonna be able to have a traditional ceremony at 2 o'clock. You're all invited to that, but I would also say that I'm more worried about the weather than I am the CDC guidelines. So we have a contingency plan in place to move that to a virtual ceremony if need be. That announcement would come about 48 hours in advance if we needed to do that. And some of that information will follow up in the senior staff bulletin from Ms. Larimer. Any questions?
It's not gonna rain.
Yeah, okay.
You take care of everything else, I'll make sure it doesn't rain.
You take care of that, I'll be a happy camper.
Yeah.
So is it rain or is it thunder and lightning?
Yes and yes. I mean,
So-
if it's lightning, we'll probably follow the same.
If it's lightning, it's definitely inside. Rain is going to depend on to what degree. So if it's a light drizzle, we'll be outside.
And it's new for us in our planning. Even I talked with Ms. Larimer about making sure the vases have enough weight in the bottom of the wind doesn't blow them over.
Uh-huh.
We bought a new stage, which we're real excited about. And Miss Hamm worked with Mr. Matthews, and we bought a new stage that, has a beautiful black skirt on it, and it's seen Mr. Springs already set it up with his crew, and it takes apart and puts up rather easily, so we feel we are confident that we can take it apart and put it back together in a moment's notice.
And for, you know, some of those people interested out there, some of us who are short like myself, 5'3", flats are required, correct?
Yes. Yes.
No heels on the field.
No heels on the field, and we'll mark out the hillsides too, so families, if they want to just bring a blanket, we do ask that they stay in groups of 4 though, and follow we went from a 6-foot distance to a 3-foot distance, and that's how we were allowed to go from 2 ceremonies to 1. So, any other questions?
Oh, that's great news.
It is, yes. These
We
seniors have
appreciate
lost a
all the work
lot,
you've done.
yes. Yes, these seniors have lost a lot, and, you know, I've heard from the parents, you know, in their survey, that they really wanted to keep a traditional setting, and I've talked to a couple of parents since, and to be able to have that experience with their friends who they've gone to school with for years is gonna mean a lot to them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, I appreciate all the work that you guys have put into this.
Thank you.
Thank you. Concerning the building reports, everybody else has run concerning the other buildings. Does anybody have any questions? Once, twice. Okay, moving on to the enrollment report.
The enrollment report is in your agenda there. Once again, I'm a broken record here, but you know, we've lost enrollment over the year. It's a very difficult year to project anything. In speaking to every other LUDA district, or at least seeing the survey, every other LUDA district, I believe the number's 2 school districts in LUDA have more students than they did last year. So all the larger districts in Illinois have lost students to somewhere. And we know we have students in Georgia. We know we have students in Texas. We know we have students in Missouri. You know, we know we have students that are spread out, that are still going to us on a remote basis. So they may come back, they may leave. We may have students that are here that are going to, this is so unique. We're doing the best we can to keep track of the number of kids we have. We are, of course, concerned with the trend, but as I keep saying, I believe next year, by maybe the 3rd or 4th month, we might have a pretty good answer for you in terms of what we believe our actual enrollment to be. Right now, it's a challenge, but the ones that we have on those numbers you see are who is either physically present or attending via remote staff. So those are all students we are currently educating, whether they're in person or not.
And we do have registration open for next year.
Registration has been open for 6 days now, and it will be open for a while longer. You know, at some point we'll give a deadline. Right now, we're just trying to encourage people to get in and register. It's really never been easier because we don't charge fees unless you're in driver's ed or want to
How much
drive
does
a
it
car.
cost to register?
Zero. Yeah, same amount you pay for your breakfast and lunch here at District 205. So, as a student, yes. If you could get on and register, that would be great, because you know, it really helps us plan our year when we have a really solid idea of who's coming in. And it's really important in every grade, but kindergarten especially, because that's always a big guess. I mean, we do the best we can to get the numbers that we can, but you know, that's the big variable every year. We've been pretty consistent with 300 students a class, but you know, until they actually show up, we don't really know. So it would be great if people would fill out the registration as soon as humanly possible.
Any other questions? Okay, let's move on to the Building and Grounds Committee report. Number 9.
We'll start with some pictures.
Microphone, please.
Sorry. Well, anyone who drives down Fremont knows the whole building looks totally different. Here, the first picture shows that. The drive now goes down to the east end of the property practically, just about totally to the east end of the property. And that is the bus drop-off lane, and it's nice and wide because the south side of all that will visitor parking. And it's coming on really nicely. Anyway, let's go back to the other one. The other slide, can you go back one? I'm sorry. That's the office area. And you'll see they're already painted, and they have the grid work for the ceilings ready to lay in. And lights, obviously. So there's good progress in the front area. It looks really nice. I like the way it moves, it flows. Okay, now let's go to the next one, I'm sorry. Okay, that used to be the back of the auditorium, that's picture on the left. And now it has a concrete floor, and that's gonna be where the 9th through 12th graders will be eating their lunches. That's our commons area. It's really hard to imagine that being part of the auditorium already. But the floor is there except for the far south end, which is the access for them to work in the Performing Arts Center area. And then the other next picture there, well, that's the same, oh, I'm sorry, we go back. No, next, there, on the right-hand side, that's the second floor. That used to be the area outside the balcony, and then where there used to be a balcony, and they're gonna build that out another 18 inches, is that right, Lee? 16 inches to the glass wall. And so this will be the eating area for our 7th and 8th graders. We just voted on the equipment for that last month, correct? Right. Okay, now we go to the next picture. There's a classroom. The nice, interesting about this classroom, the new univents in place. I don't think they're connected yet. I'm glad to see they're covered so they don't end up filled with dust when they start blowing air conditioning or heat whenever that we get it all hooked up. But the classrooms are taking shape. It doesn't show there's no ceiling yet. But yeah. Yes. That's a separate. Okay, now we go on. This is in the former area vocational center. We have the trenches there, Lee. Are those for water lines, or what are those?
Those are the existing trenches that are being filled in. So if you remember, they had little trench drains and grades in the vocational shops.
Okay.
So they're being filled back in.
Okay, and then we have the steel studs that mark out the classroom. That one, I believe, is marking out the restroom on the far north side, though, isn't it?
No, that is a classroom.
That's a classroom?
You can see the
Oh,
overhead door in the background. That
Okay.
You're actually looking into a classroom, that'd be where the door would be.
Okay. But for the most part, the walls are framed in for all the classrooms back there. It's pretty exciting. It's amazing how wide it was. And the addition that's going on starting this summer will be just as wide. So when you go from one to another, you're probably going to be able to tell the difference. Okay. This is cool. They're taking down the chimney. Correct? Are both of them coming down?
Yeah.
Because we don't need that at our hot water plant, correct?
Correct, yeah, that'll be vented differently, so the chimney is not necessary anymore. And it was actually an item of life safety, either we had to tuck point and spend money repairing the chimneys, for part of your life safety grant monies, or meeting your roof, so.
It's a slow process, though. I was watching a bit today.
It's all by hand.
Because you don't want to wreck the building below it.
Correct.
Okay. Now this building is almost all finished. This is the back 1/3 of the building we agreed to a contract for, the former Northwoods Church, and it's pretty well finished. It's pretty exciting. I think we've seen some pictures inside. Okay, what we have here is the first picture shows the large circulation fan, because while there's air conditioning in the classrooms on the far south side, the shop rooms on the north end of our remodeled space there will not have air conditioning. auto shop, the metal workshop, the computer-assisted design, and the wood shop are not air conditioned. Did I list them all? Good. And the picture here shows that long area.
So down below on the bottom left, that's the new aggregate of the wall. That's the hallway, right?
Right. It's looking really nice. I mean, we're all very proud of it. And I believe that comes to an end of the pictures, correct? Oh, no. Well, that's the wood shop at the far left-hand corner. Some equipment's in place. The ventilation or the vacuum system is there hanging down below. And the other one is just one of the three classrooms that are along the south wall. They have windows that open up to the larger space. These are an example of 3 air-conditioned rooms.
Actually, 4.
4?
Because we have the health services room
Okay.
as well.
Is that the last picture? Yes, it is. Things are coming along really well. It's exciting. I walked through again this morning. Lee? Eric?
One of the projects we started, it's coming up on a year now, was trying to bring some life to the athletic field house. If you've been there, it's very stale. It's just kind of blah. You don't really know where you're at. So I got with a company out of Peoria, System X, and just started the process of brainstorming on things that we can do to kind of brand it and really kind of showcase the facility that it really is. So this is, like I said, been going on for a year. We have kind of come up with the final proofs, so I wanted to kind of bring that to you guys so you could see it, to kind of give you okay to kind of move to the final phase of doing some prep work to the walls and then getting things installed this summer. So when we come back in August, everything is ready to go. Okay, so first off, when you go to the field house right now, there's nothing there. It says nothing. The only thing that's on there right now is 1242 is the address. So we tried to come up with the logo and the field house name, and we talked about having 2 different doors this year. That would have been great to have that is with all the events there, either coming in the silver door or the gold door. So this is what we came up with to kind of highlight the entrance and just having the doors kind of separated. Any questions with that? Okay. Now we've walked into the field house, and right now that's just a white wall. So we really wanted to, we kind of went back and forth on this. I'm trying to figure out what we wanted to do there, and whether we were gonna have our own athletes or silhouettes, and we went back and forth for a long time, and it was trying to figure out who would be up there, and it seemed to create more of an issue of who, finding pictures, quality of picture, and it became more of a process than we were really ready to take on. So we came up with, working with them with silhouettes. So every sport or activity is represented in the silhouettes, as far as band, swimming, golf, everything is up there. And then we kind of threw in little things along the way, go streaks, silver, gold. In the middle, there would be the logo, and it will lay flat on each side, so whether you're in the field house or in the doorway, it'll lay flat. So this is one section of the wall. I think this is to the, if you're in the hallway, it would be to the left of the window. And then this would be on the right-hand side of the window. And it'll fill the whole wall. So we'll kind of paint the whole wall, and it'll have like a border at the top and the bottom, and then that will overlay on that. So it won't go all the way to the floor, all the way to the ceiling. Especially the ceiling, because we've got pipes and things running through there, so we've got to have a break point, so it's gonna kind of be a border go around the top and the bottom.
hallway across from, the athletic training room and the doors that would lead out to the field house. So on the backside of that, where that G is actually the boys' football locker room or track and field locker room. This is the same wall. We actually have the benches from the school that we brought over because we weren't sure we're gonna how to use them. So they will be in the wall. This will eliminate chairs being up against the wall that will damage it. We wanted something heavy and permanent there, and they actually fill the space really well. And I know it's kind of hard to tell, but there's actually a watermark of a train in behind the home of the streets. So we'll do the same.
Now, with that word, go back to the last one, I'm sorry. What's it say in the far right-hand corner? Is that something you're gonna keep, or is that just?
Well, that just says that it's not a final proof.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that box won't be on the wall.
Okay.
I'm sorry, we're not gonna do that, so then we'll have to do the same thing with that wall, we'll have to prep and do some other things, but, and then this actually is, if you're standing on the field, we were trying to figure out a way to highlight something on what we call the skybox. So it's simple, but you know, as we use it for high school and junior high events, we were trying to keep it broad enough that you knew where you were at. So, and those, I mean, if you've been to the field, hopefully, I mean, that's a large space that will be covered there. You will be able to see out through that, but not through. Yeah.
So that's where, since Pick's here, that's where Pick and I watch games. Can we have our names put down there so we sit next to each other and watch football?
But overall, oh, and then we'll
Just ignore me. Just ignore me. You don't get it either, Pick. Sorry, buddy.
So one other thing is, you know, now that we use that space more and more and more, the walls themselves are kind of blocked in there. So we'll have conference banners that will fill the space. Maybe not on that wall, but I mean I think they're like 6 by 8 or even bigger so that they fit the wall and look appropriate while they're in there. And then with the new conference logo. So this is kind of like a phase 1 thing. The next thing we would like to do in there is actually do something inside the field house, whether it's probably something along the top of the wall to kind of recognize the inside part of it. Any questions? Maureen, what do you got?
The last picture was inside though, right?
It is,
Okay.
yeah. So like right now, there's nothing. This will give us an idea of who's in our conference and kind of highlight those in that space.
Speaking as someone who is in that building a lot, I appreciate all of that because it's just like white walls and.
Yeah.
And
I think, you know, it was probably when the project was getting built, it was trying to get that part done. And now it's been a number of years, so now we really need to kind of, and we're gonna be a 7-12 building, we need to kind of, you know, start putting some of those things in there. So, like I said, it's kind of step 1. I'd like to do something outside on the bleachers too with the logos and things, so it's kind of spearheaded into some other projects, you know, in a couple of years, just some kind of brainstorming things. So I think it's a really good start. They've been great to work with. They've been very patient, because as COVID has hit this, it's just taken a lot longer to kind of get to where we're at. But I feel like we're in a good spot now.
Anybody else have any questions or comments?
Mr. Matthews, I know there's gonna be a question of how are we paying for that?
Sure, yeah, so it's actually, 3 parties are kind of working together on this. So the athletic department, you know, we host a lot of tournaments and things, so we have an account that we work with. So it'll be from my department, the Booster Club has partnered up, and then with the school district. So between the 3 of us, we've all kind of shared the financial responsibility to get this all going. Yep.
Thank you.
And not that I want to create more work for anybody, but I think I've mentioned this to somebody already, and I don't know who it was. Given the increased use because the other gyms have been, used for other things. Do we have a plan to go back with maintenance? I'm looking at Mrs. Ham.
To go back with maintenance.
And do things that the field house might need done after the increased usage, because steel and white ball have been used for other things.
And when you say like what types of maintenance were you thinking?
So like, making sure that the floor inside, right, I don't know if there's holes, I haven't been in there for a while, but just like maintenance of the track inside, the floor inside. There is a room that it doubles for two different things, and I think it's being used as a classroom right now. So making sure that, because there's been so much foot traffic in there, and I know it was hard to take care of prior to all of that foot traffic, because just the space is so huge and there's so much.
Yeah, and that's something that we, it's been a struggle for everything, and working with Mr. Spring on trying to keep things, as clean as we possibly can, and we've been shorthanded just because we have positions that we can't fill. So we've had subs in, it's kind of been an all hands on deck kind of thing, to kind of keep those spaces as clean as possible, especially because we've been in there so much, in a short amount of time. And I think, whenever, and I'm not trying to speak for you, I have a feeling once the buildings and everything gets set and we kind of regroup and go back, we'll be able to kind of divide those things up, and hopefully we'll be able to hire some individuals to fill some of those open positions, especially over the field house. It was just getting used so much on every day from 6 in the morning till 10 o'clock at night. It was just, go. And we've actually had a little bit of a break now because we're outside, though we're wrestling, which is hard to believe, but we have wrestling going on. So the usage has been relieved a little bit, which has been good, and Mother Nature has been nice, and we've been able to be outside. But yeah, it's something that Mr. Spring and I have just kind of really been working together to try to, keep things going along the best we can, and just trying to get through it, and then take a step back, regroup, and then figure it out.
Well, and I know even before the increased usage, there were some challenges, because sometimes we would have to place trash cans.
Yeah, I think
around.
we've got those
all that, okay.
areas fixed, yes, I would agree. I think we're good there.
And I think we've gotten the sports floor repaired for any areas that were a problem there. Mr. Matthew does a nice job with making sure that floor is refinished
Yep.
as it's needed.
Yep, we'll have that done this summer again.
And, Mr. Spring and I have already been working on the realignment of the job descriptions once the modulars go away and then we're not using Rose Coben and Yale. That actually we're going to be in a much better position with personnel. And then when we close Churchill, then all of that staff will also then come over to the high school. So, even in the fall, we're gonna be in a much better position with custodial staff. And we would have hired the individuals if we could find them, but unfortunately, we are experiencing the same thing that most employers are, that there are more positions than people are willing to take. And so we've had a lot of great staff members who have offered to do a lot of overtime for us, but we can only spread our people so thin and in so many places. So I think a lot of this will
Yeah.
rectify itself in the.
Yeah, and coaches have been great, after games on Tuesdays, Fridays, and Saturdays, it was picking up, cleaning chairs, I'm cleaning, everybody's all hands on deck to get things clean, because it's what we were in, and it's what we had to do to make it work, and if we're gonna actually be able to host and do these things, it's kind of what we had to do.
Well, and to give people who may not understand what the field house is used for, it's used for competitions, but it's also used for practices. And when I say practices, there's room in there for the baseball team to do indoor practices when the weather is inclement, right? So they have their nets that come down and they do pitching and they do hitting inside there. You have track doing indoor workouts inside. Cheerleading goes in there, dance, basketball, volleyball. There's not a square inch of that field house that isn't used at some portion after school hours, because during school it's being used at this moment for classes. So, you know, just to make sure that we don't put ourselves in a position, you know, that the district found themselves in a decade ago with a lot of deferred maintenance, just wanting to make sure that we stay on top of that, because it's getting used in many, many ways because of the other gyms, so.
Yeah, we definitely have to stay on top of it, it'll be a bigger issue, for sure.
Do we need to provide Mr. Matthews some direction with the branding, with the proceed with that, or?
Yeah, I mean, is everybody okay with what, I mean, I'm comfortable with what the funding plan is. Mrs. Sam has shown me, if we feel like we've got the funds to do it, I think because we're gonna use the field house even more, we need to show, we're doing everything else, it feels like we're leaving off a huge area that could be a really nice addition if we could do it. Does anybody have a problem moving forward, I guess we could.
What's the dollar amount that's being spent?
It's around 27,000. Yeah. So, the booster club and myself are chipping in 10 grand, and then the district we're working with the district for the remaining balance, so, yeah.
And do you have a timeline in mind for phase 2? If this is phase 1, what's
Well,
if you had a crystal ball?
So when I talk to the individual that I was working with, when they come in for the install sometime this summer, we're gonna kind of just start brainstorming, so, hopefully sooner than later with, you know, getting through the COVID part, we'll be able to kind of do some things, and it's done inside, so we won't have to worry about Mother Nature, so it could be done a little bit quicker too. So, I don't know, hopefully within maybe another year or so, we'd be able to kind of do phase 2. Yeah.
Thank you. That's enlightening. Moving on, we have several items for Ms. Ham. Discussion regarding energy and savings.
We're gonna start with the silence discussion now, Mrs. Sam, so.
Oh, yes, sorry.
Yeah.
All excited to just give it all to Lee.
Okay. So tonight we just wanna kind of inform everybody about a potential energy savings upgrade that we want to look at for Silas Willard. We're still in the process of, having some individuals at Helm, do some projections and look at, our current energy costs over the last year, but if you pay attention to the bills, and I know all of you do, you probably noticed that our energy costs at Silas are the highest in the district, especially per square footage.
What is Helm?
Helm is a mechanical engineering, a mechanical repair company that we work with. So, Helm came in, we were having some issues with our boilers that they are going to have to reroute some piping. It had to do with how, water was flowing into the boilers. And, as part of this, they were looking at our control system and how our train system and our control system, sometimes fight each other. And that if we could basically create, or they could create a program, which they've done for other K-12 districts, that they believe they could substantially improve our energy efficiency. So it would be turning off boilers, turning off air handlers at a more appropriate time. Right now, air handlers are working 24 hours a day when they really don't need to. So it's a sequencing issue. And they've been able to work with Pekin schools in getting the sequencing correct through some of their programming. And so they're doing an analysis for us, and they believe that they could save us $100,000 over 5 years. So it's a pretty substantial amount of money. We just wanted to begin the discussion tonight. We're not asking you to approve anything. We have sent all of our energy information to them. They'll be putting it through their model, and they'll be getting us more information before a proposal comes forward. But we definitely think it's something that we should consider, because it will potentially save us quite a bit of money in a 5-year period of time in Silas. It's such a huge building, and the layout, you know, which none of us designed or approved, but it is a two-story, it just requires a lot of energy. And so if we could even reduce those bills by $20,000 a year, and I think that's a good start.
So that has steam heat?
Yes, we have boilers in there.
Really?
Well, it's
It's
hot
hot
water,
water.
we don't have any steam boilers.
Okay.
Right, so in the nutshell, there's two boilers in there, and the way it's piped isn't right, and the way the controls are done, they're not optimal, so that the way the cold and hot water mix together is not correct. And so it's calling for cooling at times when it shouldn't have to cool, and it won't heat to the right temperature, and it's creating a lot more, you're having to use a lot more energy to get to a temperature you don't wanna get to. So not only is it a creature comfort problem, it's also, we're overtaxing the pumps because it's not piped correctly.
Can I speak just for a second?
Yes, yeah, please.
I'll use the term, that building is never.
Move to the microphone.
Okay, sorry. I use the term that building is never satisfied. Things just run all the time there. The cold stretch that we had, when was it they were talking about how we should reduce our, using our gas and stuff?
That was in January.
That in January? In January, February, that cold snap we had for a couple weeks where they were saying we needed to save money, you need to turn your thermostats back. We couldn't do that there because that building would never catch up. Like they said, to set it back at 60 at night, and we talked about doing that, we would never get to 70. So those kids and the teachers were just freezing all the time in there because the building just runs and runs and runs. And Paul Alvarado from Helm, he's a local guy here, and I jokingly said that I spoke to him more, this winter than I do my wife. I have my speed dial just because we always had so many problems there, just trying to, keep that building, trying to get it satisfied. So, and I know Mr. Bradford and I have talked on the daily as well. So, I fully support this as a, try to get some help there. So,
Thank you.
If anybody thinks of any questions that they have that they would like us to pass on to help, I'm hoping maybe next month or the month after in July that we would have a formal proposal that I could share that then would outline energy efficiency.
Right, well, just so you know, so we met with them on, anyway, this week. And they had a proposal for us, and we told them, you know what, we need to see this in terms of how we're gonna save money on the other side of it. So we've given them a year's worth of power bills. They're supposed to be coming back and showing us, you spend X, you should save Y, and over 5 years, let's see how it works. So when it does ultimately come to you, there should be more of a comprehensive view of not only will the temperature be correct in the building, but yes, we'll have to spend some money up front. We should be able to recoup that money over a certain number of years.
I guess I sit here very disappointed that we just built a building that was engineered poorly. I mean, we're not still using the same mechanical engineering firm, I hope.
No, they were associated with Corrigan and Clark.
Right.
And so when we ended our relationship with Corrigan and Clark, we also ended our relationship with them.
And who was that firm?
They were actually their in-house mechanical engineers at Corrigan and Clark.
Oh, really?
So, and we've had struggles. One of the issues that we really had from the beginning is typically you do commissioning before the building is open. Well, as everyone remembers, we moved from old silos to new silos over spring break in the spring of 2016. So they were never able to commission the building for heating until the following school year. Well, we had a building full of people at that point. So then doing that commissioning work is more challenging as you're trying to make those adjustments. And Lee can attest, we've had numerous meetings with Train and PIPCO and other agencies that worked on the building, that there was just something that's never quite been right in that building. That's been really difficult to detect, and there have been lots of tweaks, and PIPCO's come back, Train's come back. And so it makes total sense for a layperson like myself when Mr. Alvarado and Mr. Weeks explained what was happening, and Dr. Osman has experience with these systems, and it made complete sense to him too, that of course, if it was piped in the manner that they explained, that there's no way that the building could ever keep up, which means, as Jason said, it's never satisfied. It's gonna keep running for efficiency. So I'm very thankful to Mr. Alvarado, that they were able to get to the bottom of this, and they brought some people down from Chicago to look at just not right. And they took the time to investigate it for us.
So, thank you. Moving on, consider approval of junior high, senior high RFP 26 entry stair. We need a motion,
So moved.
Second.
and Leslie.
Yes, so, yes, this RFP, and I'll just kind of touch on the high points if you want to dive in deeper on it, you can let me know. As you recall in the photos, we're redoing the whole front entry of the project. It was identified during the construction meetings that, they asked, well, what are we doing at the front stairs? And the original scope was the stairs to the, building, you know, the handrail ramps, the black handrail that was there was to remain. So we got pricing to replace those stairs, there's some chips in them and the railings are not the best shape. So that is this RFP, so it's $53,429, and what that includes is new concrete stairs at the front, a new ramp at the front, and then stainless steel handrail, not black handrail. So if you're familiar with the side entry that was added on when we did the, front, the curtain wall, they have stainless steel handrail in there, so it's the two pipe handrail matching that, that's, should be very maintenance friendly, with all this all, so. We priced up two options, we did price up aluminum and stainless steel. Aluminum was about $1,000 more than stainless steel, both should be, corrosion resistant, so stainless steel was kind of preferred. That is the majority of the cost, actually, looking at is all the railings, there's a lot of handrail. The current layout you have for the stairs, they don't actually have enough handrail per code, they have like two.
Or aren't any stairs there right now?
Well, no, but the old stairs, there were really not any handrails either.
Yeah,
There's one in the middle
so
of the stair.
the majority of the cost that really comes to you as part of that, this change is really the handrail. So if for some reason, you know, you're not inclined to go forward with this, we'll probably go back and price up steel painted handrail, that is more of a maintenance item. That it would be less cost, but with those steel prices right now, I don't know how much less it would be, because steel is about triple what it was 2 months ago, so.
It's on the agenda. So the ramp though, would still be at the north end of the stair.
Yeah, the
We're not changing the layout.
The layout does not change, no, it's just, providing the concrete that's, there's not crackers and that holes in it, and so it kind of matches the whole aesthetic of that whole new redone front entry.
There were
West,
stairs-
yes.
There were stairs that were
Sorry.
probably, they were in pretty rough shape, you.
Once you took the bushes on, you saw them, though. So you kind
The
of
handrails on the plan.
hate to redo the front entry, new choir addition, all the new, and then have the main entry stairs, you know, chip paint. So that was the request.
Any other questions? Okay, we would need to take a vote on it.
Lyon?
Yes.
Phelps?
Aye.
Rodriguez? Aye. Murphy?
Aye.
Vestal? Fletcher? Savantes?
Aye.
Okay, moving on, need a motion for approval of the junior senior RFP 21 Surgery Rough and
I still move for whatever that means.
Second.
All right, so this one, so last month I brought forward the quotes on the server equipment for the second floor. We purposely did not include the bidding of the mechanical and electrical rough end or the power and plumbing to that as part of that addition because it was very messy with the existing scope. So now that that's approved, we got pricing to provide all the piping and electrical to this. So the electrical was the lesser cost because there's no electrical in that area. What I'm bringing to you is the piping cost, so this is the plumbing that serves those server equipments. So we have two server locations, you have floor sinks and sinks. A floor sink with, you know, down in there that has to be piped to all the hot water, cold water that runs to those equipment. So what the locations, these are going in, if you recall, second floor, one on either end of that, 9, 7, 8 cafeteria. And-
7, 8, not 9, 7. 7, 8.
7, 8.
7, 8.
Cafeteria upstairs, and we'll be running piping down the wall into the crawl space, and then going through the crawl space to connect to the sanitary. So there's
plumbing really in that section of the building, so it is bringing quite a bit of video footage. When we did price it up, I had both, Leggett, RTM, and Russell all do cost analysis to make sure it's in line, and it is. So this is mainly for the plumbing to serve your surgery, so you're not falling buckets of water down the hallway, Indian food, the hot water trays and that good stuff.
What's the cost for this?
It is $53,429.
$53,429.
Guess you kind of need it.
Yeah, so I mean, this was a cost we knew we were gonna need, and we just had to figure out how to best commit it, and then we decided that because it is integral into all the piping components as phase two, to bid it as phase three wasn't the most prudent move, because in the scenario, which we did get, MSI got phase three, they'd be trying to then connect piping in the middle of the phase two work, so that's why we chose to do this as a change order versus the bid.
So Northwest has this work done?
Northwest has phase two work, yes, so, MSI has basically, that addition is where their work is, the front addition is where their work's confined to.
Any more questions? Allison?
Phelps?
Aye.
Rodriguez?
Aye.
Trippy?
Aye.
Festham? Fletcher? Fuentes?
Aye.
Lyon?
Yes.
Okay, moving on, need a motion to consider approval of junior, senior high RFP 32 utility electrical connection.
I so moved because I'm in favor of electricity, not the cost.
I agree with
Sec,
Alright, so, I'm not gonna read the whole letter, but I tried to explain out the background history of this, I think Dr. Aspin also explained some of this, but to give a high-level overview, working with Ameren and the power company to coordinate the final connections to our switchgear, has determined that the existing transformers, which I'm guessing date back to the fifties, when the building was built based on looking at them, are not big enough to serve the model, new loads to the chillers and the new square footage. And then it was determined in the process that, Ameren's, they need to upgrade, we need to upgrade this switchgear, or the substation in the process. So Ameren's taking possession of the substation, which currently they're saying the district owns, and providing a new transformer, and then part of this is, we, as the district, would have to provide a sectionalizer, which is a part of electrical switchgear. If you've been out by there, there's a big cabinet for the solar array that got installed this past year. There'll be 4 more cabinets like that. One is a meter base, and one's a, I forget all the different ones, but they're all sectionalized out per what needs to happen. So the school is primarily metered, meaning you have a main meter at that location that subs feeds from there to different parts of the district for this, of the school building. There's 4 or 5 secondaries throughout. So it is a kind of complicated, it's a medium voltage feed. But this will provide us an all upgraded, and coordinated with Ameren, the amount of power we need. So I think right now you're at 0.75 megawatts, and we're gonna need up to 2.8 or 2.7 megawatts of power to power the building, so.
So there's two big, as I understand it rightly, there's two big changes other than square footage. You have the air conditioning, which was not there before, and you also have fire suppression, which is a lot of,
Right, which typically you won't really ever use,
but you have to
but
have.
you have to have it in case you need, so the fire pump is all electric, so you have to have that surge capacity there. And then the air conditioning is your biggest load. You have 2 big chillers that are the size of a school bus that sits outside.
It came today.
Yeah, so I mean, I think they are sitting on site, not in final location, but they're out there. So, yeah,
So the price tag, before everybody hears the price tag, everybody here knows it. So, remember Phelps had always said there had to be some skeletons. This is the biggest skeleton we found.
yes.
We don't know that we owned the substation, but Ameren says they didn't own it. And it was before it was Ameren, it was Illinois Power. Who knows? But their
Illinois, for all this installed is $206,535. So, the sectionalizer, they said each piece of that is around $25,000 just for the equipment cost for each piece, there's 4 pieces, so. And then we're
Well, we get 4 months of free electricity now, right?
Which does bring up another discussion point that we're gonna have to talk about after you vote on this, so before you go to the next item, just please make sure you come back to me, that's something we need to discuss. Okay.
So Cameron is the has all the infrastructure or distribution. So why do they say that they don't own transformers when that is distribution to our facility?
It's a great question.
They say it's not on their books.
But it doesn't, but it's not on ours.
We have
and it
no
doesn't-
records to prove for or against that.
But here, once again, they're the big, they control all the gold, and they are the ones that have the distribution. There is no logical reason why that is not theirs.
And that's why we never would have dreamed, and the engineer and, when we designed this, they didn't dream to go and design a new substation, so.
But we're not paying for the substation, correct?
But they're taking the substation out and providing a new transformer, because they build them different now than they did in the 50s. So if you go out there now, there's a fenced in enclosure that looks like a raccoon can go out there and then light themselves on fire, big switches they throw. And, now it's gonna be a green box that's all underground and safe and no barbed wire, and so that's a good thing. But, yeah, this, looks like it was provided in the 50s, probably the same way they did, powered up, Maytag and all the other plants back then, I'm sure. And I don't know, not from being in the area, I don't know if that was a different way they used to do things from Illinois Power, I can't imagine it. I mean, I've never heard of a district owning a substation or transformers.
We have nothing showing we owned it.
Yeah, so I mean, I can't speak to why this is where it is, but there's been a lot of discussions before we got to today between the engineer and Ameren and trying to track this thing down, and this is where we've got to. So I know Dr. Osmond's been involved too, trying to help, but there's no documentation on either side that can prove one way or another, I guess.
So that brings me to, I've just approved 100,000, here's 200, so now I'm up to 300,000. Where's this money coming from?
So based on where we are today, we pretty much all but used all our contingency with all these changes that we're talking about today. So, there is still some phase 3 out there, but we pretty much, the contingency that we started. So, but I will say that one of the questions you're gonna ask me next then, because I imagine is, okay, we haven't started building the additions, what's gonna help us there, right? So, the one thing we do know is that when we build new buildings, we kind of know our risks. We know soil's our biggest risk, and then there are new buildings, so there should be less risk with a lot of other stuff. So, we identified line item contingencies that are built in the budget called allowances for soil issues. We had geotechnical reports early on that identified potential unsuitable soils. So we've identified what amount of rock may have to go in there and what that looks like. So we do have line item allowances for some of those risks for the additions that make me feel comfortable with that. We also have line item allowances for unsuitable soils on the site. And the whole front entry, with all the work we've done to date, we haven't had these, so that's been good. So I think we have, about, I would say about $100,000 of unsuitable soil allowances for the additions, and we dipped into so far 10 grand, 15 grand of it so far, so in that aspect, I feel pretty comfortable there. But these, we're getting close to the end of the skeletons of the old buildings, as the demo's done, getting power on and all those things, so.
And then there's complication about installing this as well, correct?
Right, so in this price is also expediting it to get it here. I can't give you a definitive date until we order it. What they're telling me is this should arrive around the second week of August, and then we have to have a 5 to 10 day shutdown when Ameren disconnects the power, and we put that in there. So that puts us in a pretty, right before school
power in the building all for 5 to 10 days?
Correct. We did in phase one, if you recall, we did add a generator hookup, external generator hookup, kind of like we have at the field house. And so the thought process is we'd look into renting a generator for that time period. That would power the kitchen, which means all the food and the freezers and coolers could remain. And then it also provides supplemental power to that wing of the building. So we would have some power in that wing. Whitehall would be down, because Whitehall's fed out of the same substation as being rent fed. So Whitehall would be down for 5 to 10 days, and then so would the high school.
So our locks and doors don't work, right?
Well, I guess I don't, they
Wow.
fail, no, they'd fail closed.
No, they fail.
If they close, yeah.
And powers
So
out.
You'd have to use
Right, people
manual
break it in.
keys.
We have an override key.
Yeah, manual
Certain people
keys.
with keys.
Yeah. And if there's one in the knock box, I mean, there are keys.
You're all right.
Now, there's,
Is the field
the
house?
field house is still powered.
Yeah, that's a separate fee.
Because we'll be right in the middle of.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
field house, football stadium, tennis courts.
That part's fine. The question here is, first of all, there's a few steps here on the decision-making tree. So if you don't approve this, well, then we've got other situations we have to deal with, because we won't have enough power for the building. And so, if we don't pay for the expedited power, we won't have power for the building, including the phones, including the fire system. If we do pay for it, if you do approve it tonight, and we do approve the expedition of it, we also think it would be a good idea, given this new information, because we heretofore had understood that the power was gonna be switched off in July. We always knew there was gonna be a power shut-off time, but we didn't know it was always gonna be in July. Now it's August. So, the question now is, do we delay the start of school? And we can choose to wait, but people make plans, there's all sorts of things. I believe it would be advisable to delay the start of school by a week, just to give us some plan there, because I would not advise us to start any form of next year in remote status. That is something we could do, but I don't believe that is a good idea.
You just couldn't get in the rooms.
Correct. I mean, it's just, it's right with problems. So, the safest, we could let it ride, you know, I mean, we can go, hey, we might make it. But that's a pretty dangerous proposition.
Right now, we just need to improve this.
Well,
like
but I
we
just,
said,
We can't start
make
without
it
power.
either.
but you need to understand all the inner workings of this thing before we move forward.
Lee, I've got another question,
Yes.
because there's something else coming up that's really chapped me, so I gotta ask this one. If we approve this, are we gonna get it? And is this the price I'm gonna pay?
That is the price you're gonna pay. From what I'm being told by the company, that yes, we are gonna get it. However, you know,
Until it's here.
until it's here, I will, we're supposed to have panels, all the panels for GABC, and I'm still waiting on one. So I still can't fire up their panel units at GABC yet. That's coming this week. And that's later than expected. So I'm hoping that these COVID delays are on the peak right now, and we'll start to normalize. That's what I'm hearing. People think they're gonna normalize by the fall. I think the summer's gonna be rough with a lot of this COVID stuff. So the biggest point is getting in the queue, getting on the books, and, getting in the system. I haven't had as much issue with Eaton so far on this project, which is who is providing all the gear for the project. And that was the, paying for the expedition is key to that. So, but getting them on the order and getting them days.
So this price includes expedited?
About $10,000 of the price is expedition to get it. If we don't pay, if we wanted to reduce it by 10 grand, then you're looking at another 6 weeks later. So that's.
You bump ahead of someone line.
So we didn't even put that, also includes overtime for electricians to install it, as to minimize that shutdown time. So we did look at this as a holistic, schedule is a big issue with this one, and saving a few pennies, trying to not get expedition didn't make sense, because it had a lot of repercussions downstream. And the one thing is, I don't want to be coming to you guys and asking to delay school, so that's not really my goal either, so. But I'd rather tell you guys this as soon as I know it versus
a lot of options. But that if we approve this, that, if possible, Dr. Aslan, you come back in June with a proposal for a calendar that starts late, right? Because I think that has to go back.
Yeah, so how that would work is you direct me to go back, I'll reconvene the calendar committee, whoever's able, willing, possible, show up, we'll do it this week. I'll of course communicate with you as soon as possible, but we would, approve an amended calendar then hopefully at the June board meeting. We're letting families know as soon as possible, hey, we're looking to move, we'll start school back a week. Just, as early as tomorrow, we would let people know. And we give them the reason why. But yeah, I think that's the prudent thing to do, as much as that's gonna make people a little upset now. Let's just magnify that times about 10,000 if we get to August and we're not able to start school, that's gonna be a lot worse. So I think it's a minor inconvenience for people right now, it'd be a major problem, come August.
Lee, if you order this tomorrow, I'm assuming you will,
Right.
when do you find out a delivery date?
I would hope within a week they would confirm that up.
Okay, so I don't want them to have this calendar committee and they say, well, now it's not gonna be here till the end of August, well, we've already changed the calendar.
Right.
And
No, we absolutely have to.
I'd like to have it so we're not keep bumping school back to do this. I wanna just have one time, hey, parents, we're this and we're doing it.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Because I asked if I could firm up that now or even start doing, shop drawings to get me going, and they wouldn't without a PO, and I can't really direct them to do a PO before the board meeting, so. I said I'd be willing to pay, a few $1,000s to pay for shop drawings, but they didn't want to give us a huge help, so.
Lee, can you just for everyone, kind of explain why Member Phelps is concerned about, are we going to pay the price that we're approving tonight and the force majeure
Yeah, that's the next.
notices that are?
That's the next item.
That's the next item.
That's the next item, we'll get to that too.
Okay.
Next item.
Let's approve electricity in the building, I think it's a real important variable. Doesn't make sense putting in air conditioning and not be able to run it.
So the motion that was approved, was that with the expert?
Yes.
It was the all-in number, yes, sir,
Okay.
206,000.
That would be my recommendation is that, what's been motion is for everything. I mean, there is options to get it lower, but you're not gonna get it before school. So this should get us, everything before school to our best of our understanding, so we'll firm that up starting now.
Lee, there used to be a time when you just bring us good news. Do you remember those days?
I do, it's about a little.
When you had the pretty pictures on the
Yeah.
screen and all that stuff, those were the good ones.
And we're under budget.
Yeah.
We're still not over budget,
Right, not yet.
but we're really close.
That's what he just told us.
We're not there yet.
You got a lot more in your building than you thought you were gonna be back then.
Yes,
That's
true, we
correct.
do, yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Any more questions? Allison?
Rodriguez? Aye. Sharpie?
Aye.
Montez?
Aye.
Preston? Spencer? Klein?
Yes.
Phelps?
Aye.
Did you have something else you needed?
Well, that was the discussion about the calendar or the other thing, so.
All right.
I will be,
No, moving on.
I will be coming back with a calendar recommendation